Now we're going to look at how a thesis and evidence will work with a narrative. A narrative is a story. We're going to be writing a narrative for our first essay. So we really want to look at the different ways that a thesis and our evidence work within that narrative. It's quite different than a research paper or a strict argument paper. We're going to look at what types of theses we might add and what type of evidence is expected. So the thesis for a narrative, we might have criteria, but the criteria can sometimes look either contrived or awkward within a narrative, kind of makes it seem more formal than it should be. So we might just disregard the criteria for that narrative. For example, driving a forklift for the first time was scary because of the steering, the braking, and the hydraulic forks. To add these criteria, it makes it seem too formal, makes it seem like we're stepping out of the narrative and we're examining that moment more than we are living that moment. So in this case, I would remove that criteria. Not only can the criteria look awkward, but we think of a narrative as moving within the timeline. And adding the criteria will remove that timeline and it will rearrange the structure of the essay based on those categories rather than based on working from moment to moment. Okay, so let's also look at evidence. So the evidence is still going to be factual and is still going to avoid making claims. But again, it's different than a research paper because we're not relying on quotes, we're not relying on studies. It's going to be relying on our own experience. So two aspects of writing that will help are going to be using concrete details and sensory language. Both of these aspects are going to better enhance our narrative and still maintain that truthful, factual focus on our evidence. Both not only support the claim, but they also help draw in the reader. When we're writing a narrative, the purpose or the function is to gain empathy with the reader, allow them to experience what we're experiencing. We don't want to talk to them or tell them. You've probably heard of that common phrase, tell or show, don't tell. And that's what that means. We want to show it. We want to invite the reader in rather than explaining this moment. And concrete details and sensory language are the ways that we're going to do that. So we're going to start with concrete details in the next video.